So officially welcoming all of you today to our Green Energy Building Tour, our virtual green building tour. Thank you so much for joining us today. People across the country and across the world have taken this tour, and it just means so much that you want to spend, an hour of your time getting deeper into this really important field. So we're here today with Barry Phoebos, our green energy educator, who is in the nice red shirt. And then we have Kelly Renkich, our facilities manager and lead green associate, who's filming Barry today. Congrats again to Kelly for getting that certification. Well-deserved. You're a genius. My name is Rianne Janovich. I am a 21 Acres administrative assistant, and I'm here to facilitate the tour. So we'll get started with this tour in a couple moments, but I want to start with just a couple of things first. I'd like to let everyone know that we encourage discussion and participation on these tours, and we love hearing from you, engaging in community dialogue, and your participation, even if it's just a thumbs up or anything, it makes these tours more pertinent and helpful to get to the root of what you'd like to listen to. So definitely ask us questions that come up through the tour. There are appropriate pausing times for Q&A after and throughout the tour as Barry, our educator, leads you through the green building. You can use the chat feature to ask questions or chat with each other. I'll be in the chat box and I'd be able to share questions to Barry. If anything awesome comes up that you want to share, you can absolutely unmute yourself to share. I do want to remind you that we are recording this call and it will be on YouTube for the public. So if you wanted to share this experience with somebody later on, you absolutely can. We'll email you when that's ready through Eventbrite. But don't be afraid to unmute yourself because the recording is only going to be on Barry and myself for just this portion. So as you'll soon see, we have a ton of fascinating sustainable features in our building and around campus, some of which deserve more reading about. So I'll send everyone also a follow-up email through Eventbrite full of resources and deeper dives into some of the features that we have and that we'll cover today. Yeah, so a bit about 21 Acres for those who are new to us. 21 Acres is a living laboratory which serves to educate our communities around climate change and how to participate in climate action by promoting and building resilient food systems that are rooted in agroecology, regenerative farming, sustainable land stewardship, and adopting sustainable living and building practices. And 21 Acres is located in Woodinville, Washington, and I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. We are on the ancestral lands of indigenous nations, including the Stillaguamish tribe, the Duwamish and Coast Salish peoples. And we acknowledge these nations as the original stewards of this land, and we honor both the land itself and the Coast Salish people, past and present. Thank you for taking a moment to learn how we're trying to steward this land for future generations and the honor it is to be here in this really beautiful place in Washington. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Barry, our tour guide and green energy educator, and I will be in the chat box. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Rianne. Can everyone hear me okay?
Sounds great.
Yep, okay, good. Yeah, so welcome everyone to 21 Acres virtually. My name's Barry Phoebos, as Rianne said. I'm the energy manager and educator here. And my background is in building science and renewable energy systems. So if you have any questions throughout the tour, of course, related to things we're talking about, please speak up. But if you have more general questions in those areas, I'm also happy to answer. Maybe if we have a little time at the end, we could just do a little Q&A that's more open-ended. But feel free to jump in at any point. And yeah, so Rianne kind of gave a summary of our mission and what we do here, but I just want to kind of tie it in a little bit more and just talk about why we do what we do. And so it's all kind of focused on finding climate solutions and climate action here. And, it's the kind of obvious problem of climate change as an environmental issue is what inspires us in large part. But it's also an important environmental justice issue or climate justice issue, because the folks who tend to deal with the impacts of climate change first and worst are those who tend to have the least responsibility for it. And in developing nations and communities of color, low-income communities throughout the globe have the least resources to deal with it as well. So that's another important kind of lens to look at climate change through. And I always want to kind of highlight that as one of the inspirations for our mission here. And so the things that we focus on, as Rianne mentioned, are sustainable living, primarily talking about green building practices and things that you can do in your home to reduce your impact and contribution to climate change, or even eliminate or benefit the climate in a proactive way. So I'll try to remember to add tips for folks at home and things like that as we go along and make the building relevant to your place in the world. Even we have a larger or medium-sized commercial building, which doesn't always translate directly to a home, but I'll try to make it relevant. And if you have a particular interest in commercial buildings, let me know and I can get more into that as well. But yeah, so we're focused on reducing building energy use and the related carbon emissions, because most of our energy still, even though it's changing, comes from fossil fuel sources, which produce carbon and send it to the atmosphere. So the more we can reduce those fossil fuel sources and use renewable energy, the better it's going to be. And buildings account for about 40% of global emissions. Buildings themselves, and then the building industry, construction and materials production and all of that, account for about 40% of global emissions. So anything we can do to reduce emissions in the building sector really makes an impact. And that's part of why we focus on that here. And that's what we'll be talking about today. But we also focus on agriculture, and that's like probably our really primary mission, because agriculture can actually have a really important carbon benefit, because in the most basic sense, plants absorb sunlight and carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and turn it into biomass. So they're actually able to take that carbon and put it into the soil. And if you do soil healthy practices or practice regenerative practices, they're called, or agroecological practices, thinking about the kind of whole ecosystem of the farm and the surrounding community, the more benefit you can have. So that's sort of my explanation of why we do what we do, why it's important to us, and why we're here at 21 acres. And so I guess I'll start by giving a little bit of context on green building and like what that means. And it's, a term that gets thrown around a lot, but essentially it's a series of practices or material choices and ways you operate your building that reduces its impact on the environment, reduces its climate impact and emissions. And there's different certifications and ways of kind of thinking about the important aspects of green building that you should be monitoring. And the one that we chose for this building is LEED, which is the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. And we've got our LEED plaque here. We're a LEED Platinum building, which is the highest certification you can earn. LEED is one of the most commonly used green building certifications. It's a program of the US Green Building Council. And so that's part of why we used it. It's also a very flexible certification. No matter where your site is, there's ways to get points. So you essentially, you get points for different features of your building that reduce its impact. So starting from pre-construction, preparing the site, if you're, doing a low impact site prep, and then through construction, material choices, using recycled materials, as locally sourced materials as you can get, low emitting materials like low VOC paints, people often heard of, things that don't release chemicals. And then, things like renewable energy systems like solar panels are more visible, obvious kinds of things. But you can even get points for having your building be accessible to local transit and the way that it's going to be used by the people that work there or live there. can help you get points. So it's a pretty flexible system, and it looks pretty holistically at the use of a building as well as the materials going into it.
Hey, Bree, I had a question really quickly, just for folks who might not know what VOCs are. I know this is a really important topic. Are you able to expand on that a little bit?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So VOC stands for volatile organic compounds. And it's basically like the thing that you smell when you're at a gas station, for example, or you open anything that has chemicals in it that has a smell. The volatile organic compounds are the things that are getting emitted into the air and that you're smelling, and they can cause harm depending on what they are. So the fewer of those volatile organic compounds that you have in a product, the healthier it is for air quality. So minimizing. What's that?
Oh, sorry. And they can even be in like furniture and clothing.
Oh yeah, yeah,
it's
all
like
kinds of materials.
very pervasive.
Yeah, and primarily in materials that are produced from petroleum, synthetic chemicals typically are the ones that have the most VOCs. But there's a lot of alternatives, and it's becoming more and more pervasive that you'll be able to kind of see a VOC profile for the product that you're buying and choose options that have a lower VOC content.
That's awesome.
Is that helpful?
Yes, that's
cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I might break for a minute and just ask, we had a chance to talk to Sue, who joined early on, but I was wondering if Gwendy, if you wanted to share if there are particular areas of sustainability or the building that you would like to focus on while we're here on the tour, if you're comfortable sharing. Just give you a minute.
And we also have another guest who just joined, Amar. Thank you so much. If either of you want to share in the chat or share vocally with what you're interested in learning today, we'd be glad to take your suggestions or follow your curiosity. And yeah, just go ahead and share in the chat, or we can have you speak vocally. But if you're more comfortable there, I will share to Barry.
Yeah, either way is fine. Just give you a minute to think about it. But the general categories of things that we'll be going over today, which I mentioned earlier, are water saving features in the building, things that reduce water usage and help manage stormwater, rainwater around the site. We'll be talking about energy a lot, the building materials that help save energy and how we use energy throughout the building. And then, those are kind of the two big categories. And we'll be looking at different systems like our geothermal heat pumps, hopefully by the end of the tour, and our solar array and composting toilets. So if there's any one of those that you'd like to dig more deeply into, please throw it out there. And while we're talking about energy, I might segue over to looking at our energy monitoring system while we're here in the lobby and have access to it. So this
so much.
What was that, Rianne? Do we have a comment or question or anything?
Just me missing the lobby. I used to be there and I missed
it. Yeah. Rianne spent a lot of time in this lobby. So this is eGauge. This is the system that we use to monitor our energy throughout the building. And this upper red line here is our total building energy usage. And if you look over to the left here, you'll see some green lines. That represents our solar production. And any of this green highlighted space is actually energy that we're sending back to the electric grid because we're not using it in the building. So we're producing more energy than we can use on a really sunny day. And then the red area is the energy that we're actively using in the building. And the white area is the energy that we use in the building that's produced by solar. But But the cool thing about this system is that we have all of the majority of our systems throughout the building have current sensors on them, or electrical sensors, so you can see how much energy they're using. And there's some labels down here you can see. But some of the bigger ones, well, I'm gonna actually put out a question to you all, if you're comfortable, making a guess as to what our biggest energy using system is in the building. What uses the most energy? Any guesses? And you can just give a general category, like, you know, lighting, heating, computer systems, ventilation, refrigeration.
We've got Lisa, who's joined us. Hello, who says refrigerator.
Refrigerator. That's a very good guess. And for most households, the refrigerator is very high on the list, if not the biggest energy user in the average household. Especially if you have electric heating, then that would probably be the highest. But otherwise, refrigeration is one of the biggest for most households. So that's a great guess. Any other guesses?
I don't see him coming in.
Okay.
I would guess.
That's fine.
I already know the answer. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, you're not allowed to guess, Rianne. Okay. Well, I will let you know that our largest energy using system in the building, despite its super efficiency, is our heating system. So our radiant floors are powered by a geothermal heat pump, which uses electricity, and it uses it very efficiently. It's about 3 to 4 times more efficient than a conventional combustion heating system, but it still uses energy and quite a bit in the heating season. So that's what you'll see over here, these lines, these dotted lines here. This big one is our radiant floor heating, and then this smaller one down here is for our hot water. And we use geothermal heating for both of those. And maybe I can unselect one so you can see it a little more clearly. So this is just our hot water, and you'll see it turns on, heats up the tank gets up to temperature, turns off, and then turns on again when the tank gets cooler or water gets used. So that's what that pattern is you're seeing. And the same thing for the heating system for the floors, and I'll turn off the hot water so you can see it a little more clearly, except it's twice as big of a heat pump, so that's why it's a little bit higher. And then you can see the spike in our energy usage when those things turn on. You can kind of tell it's our primary usage. So I'll stop nerding out on that for just a minute, but I just wanted to share that this kind of energy monitoring system, this one's pretty extensive, and probably you might not want to invest in it for just a home use, but there are really fun things you can play with called smart plugs, which you might have if you have like a smart speaker or something like that. So if you tell like Alexa, dim the lights, and there's those little plugs in the wall that go into your lamp that can actually dim the lights when you tell them that. Those things are actually capable of monitoring the energy use at the plug. And if you buy ones that have an app that does energy monitoring, you can get them for fairly inexpensive online, and play around with seeing how much energy is my computer using, how much is my light, how much are my lights using, and you might even be able to use like your refrigerator, things like that. So you could look at different what are called plug loads around your house. Could be a fun way to use them at home. And then if you're having electrical work done and you're a homeowner, you might consider having a unit installed within your electrical service panel, so that you can look at things that don't have plugs, like your heating system or other things along those lines. So it's a great resource, and if you're looking to save energy, it's really important to know where you're using the most of it, so you can target those things and improve your energy efficiency. So kind of knowing is half the battle. So energy monitoring is half the battle in saving energy. So that's why we like to talk about it. Any questions about that before we move on?
Yeah, as I wait for any questions to pop in, I wanted to share that I'll send out a follow-up email with some of these resources so you can apply some of these things to the home front, like Barry was saying with the smart plug apps, and they do have e-gauge for residential type of modifications, but it is still very extensive, as he said, but still worth a look.
Yeah. And if you want to do a full building energy monitoring for your home, eGauge is a relatively affordable product, but it's a larger investment than doing something like smart plugs or the very first kind of plug load monitoring thing that I became aware of was a little thing called a kilowatt meter, and it's just like a little plastic box you put into the plug, and then you can actually see it reads out how many watts or volts or all the electrical aspects of whatever's plugged into it, and you can monitor over time like how much your refrigerator is using or whatever you want to look at. So kilowatt meters started it all, for me at least. So now we'll head outside, take a look at some things out here.
Oh, Kelly, can you give a nice little pan of our beautiful tree line? Oh.
Yeah. So while we're out here and Kelly's looking around, I'll just say we're at the very top of the agricultural production district here in Woodinville. So there's about 1,000 acres of farmland, preserved farmland, and we're at the very top of it here. And we were able to build our building here because of our mission to support sustainable agriculture and the local food system, and also because we wanted to live very lightly on the land here and have a low impact building. And so we'll look at some of the ways that our building is able to kind of blend with the environment. Towards the end, like I can show you some images of our green roof. Or maybe we could try going up there if you're up for it, but we might lose cell service. But while we're out here on the patio, I think it's a good opportunity to talk about rainwater. So I'll start with that, especially since it's drizzling a little bit right now. Can you all still hear me? I'm still getting service?
Yeah.
All right, good.
It's kind of frozen, but I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, what I'm standing on top of right now is not a completely paved surface, but it's permeable pavers. I don't know if you're able to see in Kelly's camera here.
It just kind of keeps freezing and unfreezing, but the voice quality sounds good, and we can see the pavers. You can see kind of the indentations in between them and how they're purple.
Yeah, I could also try sharing on my camera if that's helpful.
If you want to give it a try, sure, but it's just kind of coming in and out. It's not too bad. It looks like it's on now, so.
Okay.
But
well,
yeah. Oh, here, let me replace the spotlight then. Yeah.
You spotlight me.
Mm-hmm.
You can see, yeah. So these are permeable pavers. So there's cracks between all of them, and you can see the whole. Oops, looks like yeah. The whole patio area is paved with this. And then also down in our parking lot, all of that is not, paved surface, but it's permeable pavers. So the really important thing about that is that water can percolate down through all those cracks and make its way back into the water table gradually. And that helps to avoid erosion and avoid runoff and chemicals and other things from roadways or from our parking lot can actually make their way into our bioswales, which are also along this edge here, kind of behind the parking lot there. And they go all the way around the front 3 acres of the building and lead to the bushy area down there, which is a rain garden. And the bioswales and the rain garden are all planted with water-loving plants, sedges and rushes that can take up chemicals, anything that does. I mean, there's not a ton of chemicals going into our parking lot, but little bits of oil and things like that might make it in. They can even take heavy metals and things up into their biomass, pull it out of the water, and allow the water to be cleaned before it makes its way back into the water table. And then there's also a wetland restoration area back behind that gravel parking lot there that helps contribute to that process as well. So a lot of intention went into rainwater management here. And then we also have green roofs, and you can't see it that well from right here, but these downspouts are directing all the water that percolates through the green roof back down into the water table. So rainwater management can help save, yeah, the environment from a number of issues like runoff and erosion, and also help recharge the aquifer. So maybe we can switch back to Kelly now.
Sure. I was going to say too that agriculture, I think I said in the chat, it uses a vast percentage of our world's fresh water. And of all the water on the earth, we have 1% of that as available fresh water. The rest, I think there's roughly 2%. The other percentage is trapped in glaciers. And we use fresh water for everything from drinking to bathing to making all the food products you've ever seen. And this is a world's usage of water. So agriculture uses 70% of the 1% of water we have available. And that's why this kind of building technology is so important. And it's great to see this used on a regenerative farm and just kind of cohesively balancing out that resource consumption. But it's just so important. All of this kind of water saving technology can impact so much more than we realize immediately.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brianne. And another thing that we won't have a chance to look at today, but out on the farm, we do have a demonstration rainwater catchment system on one of our propagation greenhouses. And we have a couple big 300-gallon cisterns that collect water that can be used for helping to offset some of our irrigation use. And the building was originally designed to have 3 or 4 30,000-gallon cisterns that would capture all of the rain that we get in the wintertime and be able to use it out on the farm. But because of code restrictions and limitations at the time, we weren't able to install those, sadly. So we do have a cistern which captures some well water out on the farm and offsets city water usage for our irrigation, as well as the rainwater catchment. But having rain barrels doing rainwater catchment can save a lot of water. And so you may or may not be able to hear it, but we have also related to water use in the building, a wastewater treatment system that's built into our hillside, a septic natural treatment system. So there's one stage that are also all of our water from our showers. Well, we have a shower, our sinks in the kitchen, dishwasher, all of that stuff. We have a education kitchen, and the bathrooms all goes into our wastewater treatment system, as well as the effluent from our composting toilets. And it gets treated here in the hillside through a natural process. The first stage is anaerobic. So there's no oxygen mixed in. It's just a tank with liquids, and the special beneficial bacteria help to break down any pathogens in the material. And then it gets transferred up to this aerobic process where there's air being pumped into the water. And you can actually hear it if you're standing out here, because there's some blowers that are basically sending bubbles through the water, keeping that bacteria that loves the oxygen-rich environment happy and allowing it to clean the water up. And from there, it goes out to some Glendon biofilters on the farm, which are kind of like a big sandbox, and they have additional beneficial bacteria that live in there. And the water percolates up through the sand gradually and makes its way back into the water table. We have a really high water table here on the farm. And so that's why we have to have those Glendon biofilters, which are above ground, but covered with mounds of sand and some plantings on top. So that covers a lot of our water usage stuff. Can anybody guess what our biggest water saving feature in the building is while we're talking about water?
And as a little hint, I guess we're not hooked up to city sewer, just as a reminder.
Right. that's why we have our own treatment system in the hillside. None of our wastewater goes to the city. It's all treated here on site. So I'll give you a few options. There's water saving fixtures installed throughout the building. So low flow faucets and shower heads and sprayers. There's composting toilets, which help reduce water usage. And there's slow drip irrigation installed throughout much of the front of the property.
We've got 2 votes for the toilets.
You are right. Right, you are. Nice job. So yeah, our building uses about 80% less water than a conventional commercial building of its size, and that's mostly attributable to our composting toilets. And one aspect of water savings that people don't always think about, there's a lot of benefits to saving water. As Rianne pointed out, it's a very finite resource on the planet, just in it for its own right. But also the ability to treat water, drinking water, to make it drinkable, and then also to treat wastewater on the way out requires a lot of energy. You have to run huge pumps to get it all to the wastewater treatment plant, to get it all through the drinking water plant. And that's one of the biggest energy uses in most municipalities is water treatment. So the less water you can use, the less energy your city is using to treat that water. And I did a calculation one time, and it's about, I think on average for the United States, about 4 watt-hours per gallon. So it doesn't sound like much, but when the gallons add up, the watt-hours add up. So water and energy are linked together in more ways than you might think. One other thing that I'd like to talk about while we're out here, and I know we're getting about halfway through the tour now, so try to reserve time for other things as well, but is passive solar design. So some of the best ways that you can save energy in a building are methods that don't require like active energy inputs. So solar panels, for example, would be an example of an active energy reduction strategy where you're generating electricity on site so that you can offset the electricity you're using in the building. But there's passive ways of using solar energy too. So an example is having windows on the south side of your building and having an overhang, and they can work together to help save you energy throughout the year. So in the winter time, like it is well, we're kind of on the tail end of winter here, going into actually just going into spring now. But you'll notice that, you know, the shadow is actually at the top of the windows of the overhang. And that's really intentional because we're still in our heating season. The sun is a little bit lower in the sky. And so the overhang is designed so that in the heating season, in the hottest part of the day or the most sunny part of the day, we get as much of that sun into the windows as possible to help heat up the building and offset our heating usage. And then we also have cement floors, which can help to absorb that solar radiation and transmit it to the room inside there. And then in the summertime, when we're out here about this time of day, the shadow is actually close to the bottom of the wall in the height of the summer, because that overhang is blocking the sun that's higher in the sky, and we're keeping as much of that solar radiation out of the windows as we can with the overhang, and allowing the building to stay cool, and the floors can actually absorb that cool night air overnight, and then kind of keep the building cool throughout the day. And we also have some solar screens that we put up to help with cooling. They're not up right now, but passive solar design is a really great strategy, thing that's been used for thousands of years. You know, the ancient Greeks oriented their houses to the south, and you know, many cultures have taken advantage of passive solar design, and we still do it now. So yeah, I guess with that, any questions before we head back inside for a minute?
Yeah, I guess we'll wait for folks to ask any And it's such I just love, I just want to share how cool it is that ancient humans already knew so much about how to work with the earth. It blew my mind when I learned it was like as old as Pythagoras, this solar gain technology. And I wish we implemented more of that ancient and experiential wisdom. Someone is wondering,
Sure.
Lisa's wondering if we might be able to show a wide view of the building. We might lose a little service, but if Kelly's comfortable, maybe.
Yeah. We can try getting a live view, and then I can also share some 3D photos on a slightly sunnier day, so you can see the building. If you want to, if you want to switch over.
Sure. Yeah. Whenever your camera's ready, I'll switch. And this is. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
Zoom in the lag of cutting people off is the worst. Let's see here. I'm just gonna try to replace your spotlight. Let's see.
Okay. Do I have?
So I think it's on you.
Okay. I will do a. Oh, I need to be enabled as a host, co-host.
Right. Sorry about that.
But yeah, Kelly gave some far off view. Apologies for our technical lag here.
Here, wait, I'm going to spotlight Kelly, and then I'm going to then make you a host. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay, now you're a host.
All right, thank you. Oops.
Thank you for this awesome just look at all of the building, Kelly, and the campus.
Okay, so let's take a look at our 3D tour. So here we are virtually in the lobby, but if we go a little further, I will take you to our back lawn so you can see the building from farther away on a sunny day. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
So you can see our full solar array from this perspective. We have a 26 kilowatt solar array, and that's about enough to power 2 to 3 average American homes over the course of a year. It produces about 27,000 kilowatt hours of electricity. And yeah, that's for us because we have a education kitchen and a market with a fair amount of refrigeration, and geothermal heating is very efficient, but it's also electric heating. It covers about a quarter or a little bit less of our heating or of our overall energy use throughout the year. But it still offsets quite a bit of electricity for us. And on a sunny day in the summer, we're actually generally, even in this time of year, producing more energy than we're using on site, and it can all go back to the grid. And that's a grid tied system. So we don't have any bad storage here. It's all connected to the grid, which is the most affordable way to have a solar installation if you're considering that for your home. And then our geothermal heating system is also buried underneath the front lawn. So the way that we capture heat for our geothermal heating are these tube coils that are buried underneath the lawn, and they capture the Earth's 55-degree temperature and send it to our heating system to help preheat the water. I'll talk more about that later, but I just wanted to show you that pic while we're looking at that. And then also wanted to give you a better view of our living roof. It looks like it's frozen here for a minute.
It is frozen. If you guys want to go back inside.
Here we go. Yeah.
Maybe the service will pick up.
Yeah. So here we are. Can everyone see that now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what our living roof looks like. And I was talking about permeable pavers and the benefits of that. The living roof has the same benefits as impermeable surface, or a permeable surface, sorry. So water can gradually make its way back into the water table. It also provides some amount of insulation. It has very porous growing media, which is a decent insulator, a lot of perlite in there. And then it's planted with kind of a xeriscape design, so ideally requiring very minimal or zero irrigation. That's what xeriscape stands for. And so it's planted with sedums and other succulents, things that can do really well without a lot of water. And it's not a super thick layer of soil. It's considered an extensive planting, or extensive. And we have another area that's equal to this size of living roof on the other side of the roof. And then you can get a slightly closer look at half of our solar array up here. And then the other part over there. And then some intensive plantings. So we have sort of some food and herb beds down kind of in the middle of the frame there that have deeper soil on the living roof. Okay. Any questions about solar or the living roof?
There's a question about
or anything.
Lisa mentioned that geothermal is super expensive, and I was just typing that it is expensive. It's great for commercial industrial builders to consider in their building plans, but I know there's some more affordable and sustainable or green heating sources that you know about, and I was wondering if oh, sorry, I'm gonna
do you want to switch? That's Kelly, our facilities manager.
There's Kelly
filming.
But I was wondering if you can you remind us of the residential kind of heating options that people might have that aren't as insanely expensive. And also, Kelly, can you flip your phone? For some reason it's there we go.
Okay. Is Kelly spotlighted again?
Mm-hmm. Yep. It was just not changing, which is weird because it usually changes when you turn your phone, but
okay. Well, thanks for bearing with us through a couple technical hiccups here. But yeah, in terms of affordable heating options for a home that kind of relate to geothermal. So there's geothermal is also known as ground sourced heating. So you're getting your heat essentially from the ground. You're preheating your heating system with heat from the ground. But there's also air sourced heat pumps, and sometimes called mini splits. And it looks like a little air conditioning unit outside a building. And then there's little registers that you can mount on the wall, or you can hide them in the ceiling and have some ducts that blow the warm air in. And they can also function as air conditioning. So if you ever touch the back of like a window air conditioning unit, it gets really hot. So what a heat pump does is it captures the hot side of the air conditioning and uses that to heat your building. And then it can also has a reversing valve, so it can also do air conditioning in the cooling season rather than the heating season. And it also has really high efficiencies, similar to a ground source heat pump. Not quite as high, but fairly close. So if you're considering replacing a heating system for your home, I would definitely look into air source heat pumps or mini split systems. And there's also high efficiency boilers that do use fossil fuel energy. So like natural gas, you can get condensing boiler. We have a backup hot water heater that uses a condensing boiler, which is a very high efficiency boiler, to make up some of our hot water during the cold parts of the year. So does that help?
Yeah, that was awesome. Lisa, thanks you, because that and also thank you, Lisa, for mentioning the kind of barrier to geothermal, because there are that technology was just so interesting. And I wanted to share, it is we have 15 minutes until the end of tour.
Okay, thank you.
And we do have a question from Sue. saying living roofs sound really interesting, but do local building codes allow those in residential areas? Great.
That is a good question. I think you would have to refer to your local building codes, but I think in most places they are allowable. My partner is actually an architect that works on residential projects, and she's working on one right now that has a green roof here in Seattle. So I think there's a lot of code precedent for green roofs. So if your local municipality doesn't have code for it, they would be able to find others that could help. But I think they're pretty accepted at this point. And it's easier to do one if you are doing new construction, so you can plan for the additional weight of the soil and the media on the roof. But if you have a pretty robust roof structure already, sometimes you can retrofit them.
Thank you so much, Barry.
For sure. And just to touch on a couple building materials, when we were looking at the green roof, you could see there's some white panels, which are actually in the ceiling of the room that we're in right now, which allow light in, and it's a super efficient skylight. So another benefit of solar is that it provides lighting, or what's called daylighting. So you don't have to use electrical lighting if you get enough solar light into your building. And so our lights are actually designed to turn off when there's enough light in the building that we don't need them on. So there's a solar sensor that controls our lights, and then there's also a motion sensor. So if no one's actively in the room, the lights will automatically turn off. No one has to remember to turn a light switch off, which saves energy. And then if there's enough sunlight in here, because we have these clear story windows up high and regular windows and these skylights, I'm getting a ton of light in here, that also causes the lights to turn off. So we just use the solar daylight for our lighting. And it's also just a nice space to be in for that reason. Natural light kind of feels better to work in, I think. And yeah, this product, CalWall, is part of what allows us to do that. It's a super insulated skylight panel, where you can also use it in walls for window type situations. It contains a nanogel material, which has essentially micro or nano engineered all these microscopic bubbles into the material that's in here. So the more trapped air you can have in a material, the better it is at insulating. So this panel is just about as good at insulating as the conventional wall of a building, like a 2x6 wall insulated with fiberglass insulation. This does it, or the most contemporary product of this size does just as good a job at insulating. This is a slightly older one, so it doesn't insulate quite as well, but it's still far better than a window. A window insulates about like a 20th as well as this does. So vast improvement from a standard skylight, and a good way to save energy, because most of your heat loss in a building is through the ceiling. So having a well-insulated ceiling is really one of the best ways you can save heating energy in a building. And that takes me to this product, which is not in the ceiling, but having well-insulated walls is also very important. And this is what our walls are made out of. It's kind of like a giant Lego block. So if you think this building was kind of built out of these giant styrofoam Legos, and then cement rebar is put into these plastic webbing pieces in between here, and then cement was poured in there. So it's a cement structure, but it's insulated with recycled styrofoam. So this product is now made with, I think, 90% recycled styrofoam. At the time, and I think only about 55% recycled content was available. But just in the construction of this building, about 15,000 pounds of styrofoam were kept out of the landfill, or actually 17,000 pounds, I think. So that's quite a bit of good recycled material content in this building. It's got 2 inches of rigid foam insulation on the inside and the outside, which helps to keep the temperature the way we want it in the building, and the way we want it outside. So warm in the winter, cool in the summer. And these are called insulated concrete forms. Sorry, I forgot to say that. And we have a few pictures here so you can kind of see how they come together and are used in wall systems.
All that styrofoam that Kelly helps collect through the neighborhood.
Yeah, we also do a lot of waste stream diversion here in the building, and Kelly is a huge advocate for that and a part of making it happen. And there's a lot of options locally for recycling styrofoam and other hard to recycle materials. So we divert quite a bit of waste here. Yeah. So that covers a lot of the, I think, lighting related things. Any questions while we're talking about that? I think I'll probably head down to the composting toilets since we have kind of limited time left.
Yes, we're at 11:51. There's
Okay.
one thing I might want to mention is can you mention where did we source those Caldwell lights? Was this a part of the Green Home Solutions?
That's a good question. Actually, yeah. So the building was opened in 2011, which was before my time. So I actually don't know where those materials, the cow wall, came from. It may have just been ordered from the company directly. I'm not sure where they're based, but if you go to the cow wall website, it's a great resource, and you can find local distributors if you're interested in that product.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, there's so many great sustainable features that are being sold through distributors, and there's sustainable green home kind of centric stores. We work with one called Green Home Solutions, and we didn't get to see the kitchen today, but it's there's some great products there, and I'm gonna send you guys a resource anyway that shows an example of what kind of at least one of the stores that you're able to source from in Washington. They may have chains elsewhere for where you're viewing from.
Totally. Thanks for sharing that, Rhian. And I can, if we have a spare minute at the end here, I could show you a 3D image of the kitchen while we're down here. But paper stone is the product that I think Rhian's referring to, which is made of recycled paper and hazelnut resin that's all sourced locally. And it's a great kind of stone countertop alternative that's locally sourced. But here we are in the compost room. So this is kind of where all the magic happens. All of the waste from our composting toilets upstairs makes its way down to these receptacles here. And there's worms and bacteria that live in these tanks with some wood shavings. There's nothing too scary in here. It's just really wood shavings and natural processes that are breaking down the waste and yeah, allowing us to use very minimal water. So a conventional toilet in a house uses anywhere from 1 to 3 gallons of water. So this is 2, sort of an average of each flush of a toilet uses about that much water. And our composting toilets have a foam flushing agent that uses about 3 ounces of water. So that's that line on this glass here, very small amount of water. So it represents about a 99% savings per flush. So it's a dramatic reduction in water usage for our building. Say the biggest water usage reduction that we have. And so these receptacles are made by Clevis Multrum, which is one of the oldest composting toilet manufacturers in the country and around the world. And it's a very simple system. There's a bed of wood shavings that was laid in here in the beginning, and the bottom of the tank is on an angle so that all the liquids make their way to the front. And like I mentioned, they get pumped into our natural wastewater treatment system in the hillside and processed there. But I can show you there's nothing too scary in here. All the oldest material that's been composted already is at the bottom. So if we did have to empty the container, which we haven't yet, we would be taking material out from here that's very well broken down. And you can see some of the wood shavings. Some spiders have taken residence in here. And then the liquids on the bottom get pumped out by this sump pump here. But it's a pretty low maintenance, simple system. We just, once a month, we do have to rake the material flat and add another layer of wood shavings, which we store up on top there. And then the worms do their work. And one of the most unusual jobs that my former boss, Melissa, had to do when she started here as facilities technician was to go out onto the farm, dig up some worms, and dump a handful down each toilet. And that was to start some what are now very thriving communities of worms in each of the composters and help break the material down. So the containers are full to maybe about here, and they don't have to be emptied until it's right at the edge here. And the facility has been open for about 10 years now, and we still haven't had to empty them. So it's just a tribute to the worms and the bacteria that keep breaking the stuff down. And once it was finished, we're probably going to apply it to landscaping around the campus. But biosolids can be applied to food crops. That's what composted waste is considered biosolids. But we'd probably just use it for landscaping for safety, but it'd be tested for pathogens first. So yeah, that's kind of the end of the road where all the waste comes out. So any questions before we finish up here in the last few minutes?
Yeah, we did have some folks who wanted to see the kitchen. If you wanted to do like the image sharing, that's awesome. And I love how, the kitchen, the environment, the landscape, the water we use, everything that we consume, it does go somewhere. It's never gone. And I'm just grateful, that we can look at waste in a larger holistic sense of like, where does it go? It is valuable. Like all of these nutrients mean something, and it's just so great to see these kinds of systems honor that. And for Melissa to grab worms is just the funniest thing ever. Throw them down the toilet.
For sure.
My childish humor. But yeah, if anyone has questions.
Oops.
Please.
Sorry, I'm trying to share the kitchen here, but it's not letting me. Maybe we should just walk up there real quick if folks are willing to hang with us for a minute. I'm just going to do that because the screen share doesn't seem to be working.
Okay.
So if you need to go at noon, feel free, but I just want to honor the question and give you a glimpse of the kitchen here.
Thank you so much.
We have time. Yeah. And are there any
I bet he's asking folks about
questions? Okay, I think I lost service for a minute.
Yeah, it's always so funny, like whenever we lose a little bit of service, it'll come back. But if any folks do have questions, please feel free to share them in the chat. And we're so glad that you could be here with us today. It's been awesome.
Yeah, thanks for being here and bearing with us through some technical difficulties. But here we are in the kitchen. This is the paper stone product that I was referring to. This is our countertop for our education kitchen. And there's some samples of it here. It's made from recycled paper and hazelnut resin. And it comes in a variety of colors and can be sourced at Green Home Solutions here in Seattle. But I think they will ship it all over the place. So it's a very cool product. In terms of materials, the front of this island is also made out of bamboo, which is a rapidly renewable material. It grows really fast. You don't have to kill the plant to harvest it. and it pulls carbon out of the atmosphere every time it grows back. And some other cool features of our kitchen, the exhaust only comes on when the stoves are actively being used. So when there's enough heat for it to come on. It's called a demand controlled ventilation system, which saves a lot of energy. And all of the appliances that we can get Energy Star certified are Energy Star certified, which means they're very energy efficient. That's the certification program of the Department of Energy. So that's a very brief summary of our education kitchen here. We do cooking classes, and it's all the food production here is focused on local ingredients and getting people to appreciate local food and support regenerative agriculture locally.
Well, that's a beautiful summary, Barry. Yes. So we're getting towards the end of everything today, and I'm sad because this was a really fun tour. You guys all asked such great questions, and we're really invested in this lifestyle and in this future that we should pay a lot of attention to. Really grateful for everyone here today.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Feel free to reach out to me over email. Brianne's going to do a follow-up with y'all and share my email address, but BarryF@21acres. If you have follow-up questions or things I can provide guidance on.